Huntsville, Alabama, the city where Southern charm meets scandal, and where every smile hides a storm. For months, whispers floated through social media like smoke. There was going to be a reunion party. Not just any gathering, but the after-reunion celebration, where champagne flowed, secrets spilled, and the cast of Love and Marriage, Huntsville would finally let loose after a long, tense season. But while everyone else was preparing their outfits and Instagram captions, one name was quietly, painfully missing from the guest list: Arionne Curry. For years, Arionne has been the name fans couldn't stop talking about, but producers pretended didn't exist. She was once the fire behind the show's biggest storm, the woman caught in the middle of Martell Holt's messy love triangle, the one whose truth was always filtered through someone else's lens. And now, at 39, she's finally speaking out, not with anger, but with heartbreak. Because this time, it wasn't just about a show. It was personal. What started as another social event in Huntsville turned into an emotional wound reopened. And the woman once labeled as the other woman is now telling her side, raw, unfiltered, and devastatingly honest. But before we get to her truth, let's rewind. Because the story of how Arionne Curry got here alone, excluded, and yet still the center of attention didn't start overnight. Years ago, before cameras, confessionals, and Instagram lives, Arionne was just a young woman with big dreams and an even bigger heart. She wasn't chasing fame or drama. She was chasing love, or at least what she thought love was. Her relationship with Martell Holt wasn't something she planned. It started quietly, innocently, the way many complicated stories do, with attention, charm, and promises. Martell was charming, successful, and confident. He made her feel seen in ways she hadn't felt before. But soon, what seemed like romance became confusion, secrecy, and betrayal. Arionne became trapped in a relationship where she loved deeply but lost herself slowly. And when Love and Marriage, Huntsville exploded onto reality TV screens, her private pain became public entertainment. She wasn't given a microphone, but her name was mentioned in every storyline. Her reality became the show's shadow. Every time Melody and Martell argued, her name echoed in the background. Every time fans cheered for Melody's strength, they threw stones at Arionne. She became the villain in a story she didn't write. Through it all, Arionne kept posting, sometimes in anger, sometimes in defense, and sometimes just trying to reclaim a piece of her identity. But nothing she said seemed to matter. To producers, she was a risk. To fans, she was a symbol of scandal. And to Martell, she was the past he couldn't erase, yet couldn't fully let go of either. Over time, the pain hardened into distance. She watched as Martell and Melody moved on publicly, doing interviews and posting photos, while she was left cleaning up the emotional wreckage of what they left behind. But even silence can be loud, and when the reunion season approached, Arionne's name started trending again. Everyone wondered if she'd finally appear. And then, the invitation list leaked. Every cast member was there. The Scotts, Melody, Martell, even newer faces got the nod. But Arionne's name? Missing. Not a single mention. At first, she brushed it off. She told herself it didn't matter, that she wasn't part of their circle, that she had her own life now. But deep down, the rejection cut deep. Because even if she didn't want to be part of the show, she didn't want to be erased from the story either. She later admitted on Instagram that when she saw photos of the event, everyone smiling, laughing, pretending like years of chaos never existed, something in her broke. "They can play pretend," she wrote, "but I'm the one who lived that truth." And with that, the internet exploded. At the reunion after-party, the energy was electric, music blasting, laughter bouncing off the walls, cameras catching every moment. But behind every cheer, there was an unspoken tension. Even though Arionne wasn't there, her presence hung over the room like perfume impossible to ignore. Melody was radiant, dressed in gold, holding her head high as if every glow-up was a statement. Martell tried to act unbothered, but sources said his eyes darted toward his phone more times than anyone could count. Every buzz made him flinch, every notification a possible reminder of the one person not in that room. Producers and cast members mingled, but you could tell they were walking on eggshells. Because even though Arionne wasn't invited, they all knew that her next post could change the narrative overnight. And that's exactly what happened. The next morning, Arionne went live on Instagram. Her tone wasn't bitter, it was broken. She spoke slowly, fighting back tears, as she said, "I gave years of my life to someone who used my story for fame and left me with the pieces. And now, they get to celebrate without even acknowledging me?" The comments flooded in. Some called her brave for speaking her truth. Others told her to move on. But one thing was clear: Arionne was no longer playing the silent role. She didn't scream. She didn't shade. She just told her truth, that she was tired of being erased, tired of pretending she was okay, tired of watching people who hurt her act like she never mattered. But here's the twist. Behind the scenes, insiders claimed that producers did talk about inviting her but chose not to at the last minute. The reason? It would have been too messy. Too messy. The same network that built its empire on drama suddenly decided Arionne was too real for TV. That single phrase, "too messy," became the spark for a movement online. Fans called out the hypocrisy that reality TV could show cheating, arguments, and humiliation, but not the woman behind the story. And that's when things got even more emotional. Arionne started sharing pieces of her journey, late-night videos, screenshots of old messages, quiet reflections about how she'd lost herself trying to prove she mattered. She admitted that she'd spent years fighting battles in silence, not just with Martell, but with herself. In one post, she wrote, "Healing isn't pretty. It's waking up every day reminding yourself you deserve better than being a secret." That line hit people hard. For the first time, fans began to see Arionne not as the villain, but as a woman who had loved deeply and suffered publicly. Friends said she was changing. She'd been focusing on her children, her small business, and her peace. But when she saw that reunion celebration, that old wound reopened. It reminded her that no matter how much she tried to move forward, the world still wanted to trap her in a storyline she didn't control. And Martell? He stayed silent. No apology, no acknowledgement, no support. Just promotional posts and business plugs. But silence can be louder than words, because when you've shared years of your life with someone and they act like you never existed, that's not just rejection. That's erasure. Arionne's heartbreak wasn't just about missing a party. It was about being reminded that she was disposable to people who had once called her important. As weeks passed, her live video kept circulating. Fans started debating whether she should be brought back next season, whether she deserved to tell her truth on camera. Some said yes, that she had every right to reclaim her story. Others argued that it was time to let go. But Arionne herself wasn't chasing fame. She said she just wanted peace, real peace, not the Instagram kind. She talked about forgiveness, not for the cameras, but for her own healing. She even said she wished Martell well, but added that some betrayals take a lifetime to understand. Behind that calm voice was a storm of emotions: disappointment, loneliness, and a quiet realization that she'd been the scapegoat for too long. What nobody expected was how her words would shift the energy. Suddenly, people who once criticized her started empathizing. Women began sharing their own stories of loving someone who made them feel invisible, of being blamed for something they didn't create. Arionne had turned her pain into a mirror for others. Meanwhile, rumors started swirling that the network was reconsidering. They'd seen the engagement, the hashtags, the growing demand for Arionne's side. Producers whispered about the redemption angle. A comeback, perhaps. But Arionne wasn't biting. When asked if she'd ever return to love and marriage, Huntsville, her response was simple: "I lived that life. I don't need to perform it." That one sentence silenced everyone. Because after years of being defined by others, she was finally defining herself. But here's the thing about healing: it doesn't always look strong. Sometimes, it's tears in the dark. Sometimes, it's logging off when you want to fight back. And sometimes, it's just learning to be okay with being left out. For Arionne, this wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming peace after years of chaos. But even peace has a price. Behind closed doors, she admitted that the reunion snub hurt more than she expected. Watching old friends pretend she never existed stung in ways she couldn't put into words. It wasn't the party itself, it was what it represented. A chapter of her life rewritten without her. And yet, she handled it with grace. She didn't go on a rant. She didn't post private messages. She just spoke her truth and let the world decide what to do with it. And for once, the world listened. The irony? By not being invited, Arionne ended up being the most talked about person from the entire reunion weekend. Every blog, every podcast, every gossip page had her name in the headlines. It was proof that you can silence a person but not their story. Her heartbreak became her power. In the days that followed, she shared a final message on her page, a quiet, emotional reflection that said, "Sometimes God removes you from places that were never meant to honor your truth." It was short. It was simple. But it said everything. Because at the end of the day, this wasn't about fame or revenge. It was about closure. About finally realizing that no amount of recognition can replace the peace that comes from walking away from pain. Arionne may have been snubbed, but she stood taller than ever. She didn't need an invitation to prove her worth. She didn't need a spotlight to shine. And maybe that's the real lesson here, that sometimes, exclusion is protection in disguise. Now, months later, as the dust settles, the energy around Arionne feels different. She's not chasing validation anymore. She's rebuilding quietly, focusing on her child, her future, and her healing. People still talk. They still speculate. But she's no longer reacting, she's rising. And maybe that's what real strength looks like, the kind that doesn't need applause. Arionne Curry's story is no longer just about heartbreak. It's about growth. It's about reclaiming power in a world that once made her feel powerless. She went from being the woman everyone whispered about to the woman who finally spoke her truth on her terms. The reunion may have snubbed her. The party may have gone on without her. But in the end, it's Arionne's voice that still echoes. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. Because when the cameras fade, the posts stop, and the hashtags die down, the truth always remains. And her truth? It's that she survived. She survived public humiliation, judgment, and heartbreak, and still found her voice again. So, as the cast moves on, as the show continues to chase drama, one thing's for sure: no one will ever forget the woman they tried to erase. Because sometimes the most powerful comeback isn't walking back into the room. It's realizing you never needed the room in the first place. And for Arionne Curry, that's her real victory. As the cameras stopped rolling and the cast of Love and Marriage, Huntsville celebrated another season, Arionne was left standing in silence, not on a set, not under the lights, but in her own truth. She had watched everyone else raise a glass, toast to new beginnings, and post their carefully curated pictures online. Meanwhile, she sat at home scrolling through her phone, realizing that her name had been erased from a story she helped shape. It wasn't just about a party. It was about respect. For years, Arionne had been the shadow everyone whispered about but never acknowledged. She had endured online hate, constant judgment, and public humiliation, yet when the show used her name to fuel ratings, no one thought to include her voice. That quiet sting of rejection hit deeper than she ever expected. Behind her calm appearance, Arionne was still human. She had loved, trusted, and believed in someone who broke her heart in front of millions. She had tried to move on, to heal privately, but the constant reminders of Martell's choices followed her everywhere. The reunion snub was just another message that she was still the outsider, the one who would never be invited to tell her side. But here's what people don't see: that moment changed her. Instead of chasing closure, Arionne began to reclaim her peace. She started focusing on her business, her child, and her own sense of worth. She stopped waiting for validation from people who had already made up their minds about her. She realized she didn't need a seat at their table when she could build her own. Still, there's a lingering sadness in her story, because behind every headline and scandal is a woman who once believed in love. Arionne wasn't perfect, but she didn't deserve to be erased like she never existed. The reunion snub wasn't just television drama, it was a reminder that some wounds take years to close. And maybe that's the real story, not the party she missed, but the peace she found afterward. In her silence, she's learning how to live without needing anyone's approval. She's learning that healing sometimes means walking away from the spotlight, even when the world is still watching. So while the cast celebrated on stage, Arionne began her own kind of reunion, not with the show, but with herself. Because at the end of the day, redemption doesn't come from an invitation. It comes from finally realizing that your worth was never up for debate. And maybe, just maybe, this heartbreak wasn't her ending, it was the start of a new chapter, one where Arionne Curry finally writes her story on her own terms.